Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to Spotcast, Season 10, Episode 2. My name is Jonathan Kuline. I am in Florenceville, Bristol, New Brunswick, Canada, and I am joined once again by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
I am great, buddy. How are you?
Doing all right. Lots of travel, so I get to experience all the aspects of wildfires everywhere. Not only breathing them in, depending where they're at, and having airplanes, not divert, thankfully, but kind of take the scenic route around them.
I guess that's something. Yeah, it's been better here as far as the smoke blowing in our direction, but the heat wave that is here right now has been unbelievable. It's been almost 40 degrees Celsius, so close to 100 here for the past 4 days, and will be that again tomorrow. And it is starting to become really, really oppressive. Like, I don't want to go outside hot.
Yeah.
I will just hope they put a complete fire ban on here too, so you can't have any outdoor fires and stuff like that because of all the dryness too. So yeah, hopefully things will get better from there. It's supposed to pour rain starting tomorrow night and rain for like 4 days in a row, which frankly the farmers here will be appreciative of. So, all right, let's dive into our show. We'll kick things off with some fact check. I was listening to our show and realized that we misspoke. We were talking about the One and Done series on Netflix. We were talking about Age of Resistance, and I think we inadvertently had said Labyrinth Age of Resistance instead of Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. So easy mix-up, very filled with terrific Jim Henson puppet characters. So that's an yep. And we'll jump over to the headlines, where we do have some Trek news this week. I was excited to see this news. So if you'll recall, in 2021, there was a short documentary series that came around for the 55th anniversary of Star Trek. It was called The Center Seat, and it was interviews behind the scenes, all these different sort of fun stories about, people who worked on the show, actors who worked on the show, talking about, all these different anecdotes and stories. And it was a fun series, although initially it was a little hard to find and a little all over the place, but it was nice that they took the time to mark the occasion. And we had talked recently about the fact there wasn't a ton of substantive things for the 60th anniversary. They'd done a nice trailer and they've done some fun stuff on social, but they really haven't done anything to market particularly of note. And then this week we got news that they're going to do a second series of The Center Seat coming on September the 8th, which is Star Trek Day. So we're going to get a bunch of more behind the scenes stuff. I saw the trailer for it, which is now up on it's up on YouTube, and you can see it on our show notes. There's a really good article here from the folks over at trekmovie.com that talks about what's going to be in it. New interviews: Jonathan Frakes, Alan Ruck, Brent Spiner, Walter Koenig, James Cromwell, Malcolm McDowell, Ron Moore, Alex Krieg, Tim Russ, Brandon Braga, like tons of people who are behind the scenes. I saw some of the stuff in the trailer that were talking about working on Star Trek Generations, which is kind of cool because there's lots of cool stories about telling that making of. So that's kind of neat. And best of all, they've also said this is going to be a lot easier to find. So last time it debuted on the History Channel's website or their History Vault streaming service, which is actually even more challenging for everyone to have. This chunk of episodes is going to come out simultaneously on Amazon Prime Video, Tubi, Apple TV, and Nacelle's YouTube page, so you can find it. I'm excited about this. How are you feeling about finally getting something to sort of mark this occasion?
It's pretty good because, boy, I don't remember the pod that Jonathan Frakes and Brent Spiner run. But I saw a YouTube short of it, which I guess maybe tells us everything about the current world. But a YouTube short of the two of those guys talking about how this is, a big anniversary coming up, and there's no active Star Trek being worked on right now. Like, it's all sort of like in the can, no new series, no new nothing. So kind of weird place for the powers that be to miss. I mean, you got another 10 years before you start planning for the 70th anniversary. What are you going to do there?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. That is still sort of the big looming issue with this, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Paramount, Warner Brothers of it all later in this episode. But it's definitely going to be a little more waiting before we finally find out what's going on with Star Trek. We know we're going to get this rest of the season of Strange New Worlds. We know next year they've already announced they're going to do the final season of Starfleet Academy and the final season, a shortened season for Strange New Worlds. And after that, they're working on stuff, but they haven't made any formal announcements of timing or where or what. There's talk that they're working on a movie. There's talk that they're working on more series, but nothing has been actually fully announced. So I would feel a little better if in the 60th anniversary year maybe they would do that, and maybe that's what they're saving for Star Trek Day. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm unclear what exactly the plan is, if there even is one. That's kind of the other sort of question.
Well, and at this point, it's who's paying for it, right? Because obviously, right now, Paramount owns this, but they're also about to throw $111 billion in the acquisition of Warner Brothers that they'd like to do. So what that means for their spending on a show like this, it's interesting. I didn't grab it. I'll grab it and add it to the show notes. There was a story this week where they were talking to, on a podcast, Chris Chibnall, who was the second most recent showrunner for Doctor Who, basically said for the first time, one of the reasons why we're not doing Doctor Who right now at the BBC is that the BBC can't afford to do Doctor Who right now because of all the cuts and because of all the expense of producing a science fiction show, and now not having access to the money that Disney was chipping in, that it's expensive to make science fiction for television, especially because people's standards have risen. They don't want to see, the Daleks looking like they were made in a garage with a plunger stuck to the front of them. They want to see something with quality. And I wonder if that's true for Star Trek. It's probably not cheap to start one of these series, especially the initial outlay of the ships and the sets and the costumes and all that stuff, the prosthetics and everything else. I'm sure that's got to be a factor.
For sure. And I think that's probably why they cut Starfleet Academy at 2 seasons, since it was like, well, most of the expense already went to exactly what you just described there. Not that much more expensive to do another one. At least I think that's probably in the calculus. Yeah. Unless it was a, we're going to do 2 no matter what, just to give it what it could have, with an idea towards doing more, since it's presumably like a traditional Academy, 4-ish years. Yeah, they would have liked to do.
Yeah, I'm still bummed about that one. The more I think about it, the more it bothers me. So maybe we shouldn't go down that rabbit hole. Let's jump over to some box office news. So later in the show, I will talk about a little bit. I got a chance to go see Spider-Man Brand New Day. Have you had a chance to see this yet, Jaime?
I have not, but I hear it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I will, as I say, I'll have that in my picks for the week. But on the news front of it, clearly not only is it well received, but it is a smash hit. I was hoping to see it last weekend because I had some time off, and every showing in our local community was sold out. I ended up getting a chance to see it last night, and even then, it was still pretty full in there. And it's already made $1 billion, and it made it in pretty close to record time. The only movie that made $1 billion faster was Avengers Endgame, when we know what kind of massive success that is. It has just been a juggernaut, and it's been out for a week, and it is just raking in the money. And not only is it raking in the money, but the critics love it, and the fans love it. If you look at the Rotten Tomato score, if you look at the critics' choices for it, scoring very, very high across the board. And this is a massive win for Marvel and a massive win for Disney, because this is coming off of them also making $1 billion off of Toy Story 5. So they're actually having a pretty good summer.
I didn't even think about it that way. The properties that they have that have been doing pretty well this summer. Yeah. I guess it's a good time, right? A good time to get your act together.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting too that this the movie was directed by, make sure I get his right. It's Destin. Oh, down here, forgot to save it. I'll find it. He is the same director who did the Shang-Chi movie, and he's also the one who did the Wonder Man series. He was the director of all the Wonder Man episodes. And I was thinking, oh, that's pretty funny that, like, in the same week that he finds out that his TV show has been canceled, Destin Daniel Cretton, Cretton, Cretin. Either way, it does not sound good. He's had a lot of success in working for Marvel over the last little while. But it's funny that in the same week that, you know, his lead actor gets an Emmy nomination for Wonder Man, the series gets canceled, and the movie he just put it in the theater makes $1 billion. Like, talk about a roller coaster week.
Yeah, that's got to be a pretty wild one to go through.
Well, you know, we should all have such problems, right? Speaking of Marvel, we got a little casting news this week. So we had been hearing that there was a possibility they were going to start announcing some of the X-Men actors at Comic-Con in San Diego recently, and that didn't come to pass. But the following week, we got news that Samara Weaving is going to be in line to play Emma Frost, the White Queen, very popular X-Men character. And this week we got news from Deadline that apparently they are folks at Marvel are circling Kit Connor to play Cyclops. I'm not super familiar with these young actors because I guess I'm showing my age. They have been on popular shows, but nothing that has crossed my paths. Are you familiar with either of them?
No, these are not folks I'm familiar with.
Yeah. Apparently, Kit Connor was in a Netflix series called Heartstopper, and he's going to be in the upcoming adaptation of Elden Ring, so that will probably be a big sort of step forward for him. And so interesting to see them come together and start to sort of see the pieces coming together for this sort of new generation. Although it does make that trailer for Avengers Doomsday that much more ominous when you know that they're recasting all these parts. You're like, what's going to happen to the old X-Men? Speaking of interesting developments, this was an interesting one. Disney and TikTok announced this week that they are going to have a new content sharing deal that gives creators a chance to use some of their IP to create content. So, you know, things like obviously Disney proper, Marvel, Star Wars, all these tools they have in the toolbox, FX properties, so that's Aliens, Predator, you know, there's so many, Simpsons, big stuff in here. They have basically said they're going to start this in the US and then expand it globally, and they're going to let people, you know, pick certain creators and then let them start working on creating unique content for the TikTok platform using their licensed characters. That's a really interesting development because, you know, it does sort of open up the, you know, well, who's the keeper of the keys, who's allowed to work on these characters, who's not. Do you see this as like something that's very egalitarian? Like, hey, now lots of people can work with these characters? Or is this like the Wild West where all of a sudden you're going to have these people just doing all kinds of random things? I'm sure there's pretty stringent guidelines on what they can and can't do, but just letting them cook with these very popular characters is a pretty interesting development.
Yeah, I don't think it's egalitarian, and the images and screen caps of, you know, the Mickey Mouse stuff with not Starbucks at South Park.
South Park, yeah.
Will they let it get like that? I'm doubtful, but maybe they found a way to give it like just enough leeway to let it be edgy, but not like, you know, terribly damaging to the brand. I can't think of how they'll. I can't think of how they'll intend to do this at scale. Like, sure, maybe you do it with like, oh, Mr. Beast. Okay, you kind of know one throat to choke, one shoulder to hug, one hand to shake, kind of thing. But we do it with 10, 100, 1,000, a million. Like, it starts getting, I think, pretty challenging there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when they say select. I'm like, does select mean 10? Does select mean 100, 1,000, 50,000? Like, what does select mean? And how do they determine whether or not you're worthy of playing in their sandbox? That's it's all very interesting. And the article that I've got here from Bleeding Cool talks about obviously some of the issues around things like AI and what is acceptable use and creation of content. And so it really is kind of an interesting little litmus test for the merging of big IP with small creation.
Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, let's talk about the Paramount WB merger yet again. The story that came out this week is that the antitrust trial, we talked a few episodes back about the fact that a bunch of attorneys general from the United States have sued to prevent this merger from happening, saying that it is anti-competitive and that will create a monopolistic company that controls too much of the marketplace. And this kind of really threw a curveball into this mix because I think the prevailing thought was that given the fact that all the pieces were in place for allies of the owners, the Ellisons of Paramount, were in place for a quick and tidy approval of this through the White House, through both houses of Congress in the United States. And then this is kind of threw things off the rail. And there was also this other wrinkle. We talked about the fact that there was going to be a potential multi-million, if not tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in penalties if this deal wasn't closed on time. So now the deal is that trial has been set for March 2027. This is not necessarily what they wanted from the Paramount ownership side, because it does mean that they're on the hook for about $1 billion in penalties. That's, I guess if you're the Ellisons, that's the cost of doing business. But that is an insane amount of money to have to pay in penalties. And so what it also means is, but this is going to be coming after the midterm elections in the United States, which means there's no guarantee that both houses of Congress will still maintain in Republican control. And obviously, the owners of Paramount are well-known donors and supporters of Republican Party. So this could be a very dramatic shift in how things are going to play out. This is a lot of stuff, but what do you make of it all?
I think it's pretty interesting that, the length of the trial means that every day it goes longer is another $7 million. If during the lunch break they eat the Taylor Farms lettuce, allegedly, and it's like, oh no, we're gonna delay this tomorrow. Oh, nobody's feeling good. Another day, and then it's just like, oh good, there's like 3 weeks of $7 million per day. That's quite the contract negotiations to have. Kind of reminds me of when AT&T tried to merge with T-Mobile, and it had not a per day thing like this, but a $1 billion breakup fee, and when the government said no, can't happen, this is antitrust, T-Mobile took that money and said, thank you, we're going to upgrade all our networks. So AT&T basically just paid to get run through the legal ringer and paid, in effect, T-Mobile, a competitor, improve itself.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll happen here, how many $7 million per day do you need to create like the next the next major feature film? Like, are we going to find out that there was a major feature film that was funded purely from these ticking fees?
Well, and that, again, we just talked about the challenges of ongoing Star Trek. I don't know how much it costs to produce an episode of New Trek, but I bet you it's not $7 million an episode. And, all this money that is just sort of vanishing in penalties is all money that could be used for things like that. So yeah, it's a little unnerving. There was also some news this week that so this deal has been approved in a lot of countries already because the stakes are lower for non-ownership based companies or countries rather. So, Canada's already approved this, Australia's already approved this, lots of European countries have approved this, UK approved this the other day. The EU is still debating it, I guess. The European Commission, they said that there are conditions that they put in place, but they think that they have an agreement in place. So really it is kind of hanging on this United States decision to sort of, have it come around. So I think this is going to be really interesting to watch. And I'll be honest with you, buddy, I'm hoping we don't have to talk about this again until March. Unless it comes to, hey, good news, somebody's going to finance some more Star Trek for us.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right. Well, that takes us to the main part of the show. This week, we're going to cover Star Trek Strange New Worlds. We're going to cover House of the Dragon, and we're going to cover Silo. We'll start things off with Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 4, Episode 3, Human Best Friend. This was, it's funny, because last week, we got a very kind of creepy, X-File-y kind of episode that focused on, this haunted ship and there was stabbings and blood and gore and all kinds of stuff. And this week they were like, what if we completely 180 from that? And so my elevator pitch for this one was, Dude, Where's My Shuttle? Which is a reference to a dated movie. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Dude, Where's My Car? But
with Ashton Kutcher and whatever the dude was,
Stifler from
American Pie.
Yeah. Two stoners who wake up the next day and can't find a car. That's essentially what we got here. Was Ortegas and Scotty. The whole main crew goes down to a party planet where, as soon as you open the doors, this naturally occurring gas hits you and you are instantly inebriated. And they basically wake up and, have to figure out, hey, where did we park the shuttle? And, what's everybody up to? And how do we get them all back onto the shuttle so we can go back to the ship? Very light, very funny, very fun. And again, a huge departure from last week's, horror, ghosts and goblins and darkness episode. It was, I like this a lot. What did you think?
Yeah, I think it's pretty fun. I thought it was a little weird that it was sort of 2 episodes-ish stitched together, like the A and B plot come together more than I thought they would. I thought it would stay more, what happened, the Hangover kind of style for the entire episode, rather than going and bringing the... I guess the B plot is essentially that they do have the negotiations that are coming up. Like, that's sort of the argument for why they need to get rested in this particular shift, at least, the heroes of our show. But I expected that to be oh yeah, okay, we got everything sorted out just in time for this, rather than sort of bleeding into it and then seeing it actually happen.
Yeah, you're right. I think of the episode from TNG where Picard gets trapped onside the holodeck, and he has to come out and he has to do this important speech, and he has to pronounce things perfectly, and he ends up getting trapped in there, and then he has to come out and he does his perfect presentation, and it all worked out. And then this one, they all get back to the ship, but they're still for the most part hammered. And so watching Pike try and address these important delegations and peace negotiations, and he's got the hangover-esque facial tattoo, and he's also got tattoos all over his fingers. He's got a huge tattoo on his shoulder, and he is there, and he is just clearly whiffing his speech, which is not going over super well with the delegates. I thought that was a nice way to sort of kick it up a notch too. It wasn't just and we all got back and it all worked out. It all worked out because this is Star Trek, but they definitely prolonged the gag in a funny way.
Yeah. Did you think that they were going to go in a particular direction with Ortegas and Scotty? Because it came up online and in other media where people said, I thought it was going to go a particular direction, and it never explicitly states against that direction, but it's more like the choices that they make of how to film this, how to present this, make it seem, I think, pretty clear that there's no romantic connection here, at least in this episode.
No, and I never really got the vibe that that was a sort of a romantic tension. They had done a pretty good job of just making it clear that they just had different ways of viewing the way that the ship should work. And I did think it was very funny. I don't know if we talked about it much last week, but the gag of, Scotty wants to have Erica kind of curb her behaviors at the helm. And so he installs all these alert noises and alert, visuals and stuff like that, which of course is what we see in the original, 1960s series, lots of bleeps and bloops and flashing lights and alert sounds and everything like that. And, so it's kind of servicing how we got to that point while simultaneously being like, it's actually just getting underneath Erica's skin. And, I thought they did a really good job of building it to be, not hatred, not, really anything hostile, but just an oil and water kind of relationship for the past few episodes. And then did a nice job of sort of mending it in this episode where they kind of have to work together in spite of the fact that Scotty is still kind of hammered through this whole thing. And then having to, obviously the two of them kind of have to make the choice in this at end of this episode. They find, of course, this bomb aboard the shuttle, which is the reason why their kind of lucid drunk selves had tried to hide the shuttle from themselves, was so that they wouldn't go and get it and bring the bomb carrying shuttle back to the Enterprise. I thought they did a good job of, again, showing that their bond had grown, their respect had grown, and that they were willing to sacrifice for each other. And then, of course, we get the end scene in this episode, the capstone, where, she's pushing the engines out and then she goes down to engineering. Engineering's on fire and she's like, did I do this? And he's like, yeah. Like, yes, you are the problem. I thought that was pretty well handled as well. That, they kind of gain some perspective on like, hey, she's going to need to push the ship and he's going to need to have to figure out how to make the ship more efficient in order to make up for that. But maybe there's some compromise on both sides.
Did you, as every member of the crew on this planet gets inebriated in their own special way from the vapors on the planet. Did you catch Dr. Mbenga's Easter egg?
Yes. Yes.
It's green.
It's green. That was actually a great Easter egg. Of course, throwing back to Data tending bar at 10 forward, trying to sort of figure out what he's serving people. It is green. I also thought that was a pretty funny one, given the running gag that we have here on this show about our my personal lack of love for Tom Cruise and his work. To have Mbenga being like the worst version of the Tom Cruise cocktail character, throwing the bottles up in the air, just smashing them on the floor and trying to show off and just being completely inept at it. I thought was really well done. I mean, everybody gets a great moment in this episode to be silly. I mean, to have, obviously Ortegas and Scotty, as the sort of central portions of this, but to have, this huge bender going on in Uhura's bedroom, where, people are in there and they're partying their brains out. And then you get Mbenga the bad bartender, you get Pike with the tattoos, you get Una singing Total Eclipse of the Heart in Klingon, which was very funny. Mm-hmm. You get Chapel starting, basically taunting and torturing these little old ladies at bingo, who are then going to rip her throat out. You get La'an basically going militant at a yoga class, and then beating the crap over and taking over a gang, which was pretty funny. Like everybody got kind of a fun thing to do. They got fun costumes. This must have been a really great, fun episode for the cast to work on, because they seemed like they all just kind of dove into it.
Yeah, and the botanical obsession of Spock.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Spock.
Keeps seeing Scotty and Ortega's as like plants and does a mind meld with the other plants.
Well, I did grab a couple of the quotes that were just fantastic. So the one from Spock is, "My mind to your leaves, my thoughts to your root system." That's a new one. That's pretty good. I also liked how are there so many Klingon power ballads when they go and find Una singing songs. They stole my eyeballs from Scotty, when he wakes up with the hood over his face was really good. And I also like Spock with hallucination, be gone. When he thinks he's having this hallucination. That was the weirdest part, I think, of the episode. And that was my sort of big question was, does it seem weird? The episode focused so much on the relationship between Scotty and Ortegas. And it also, had all these different plot lines reading through it, the different characters. The episode title references Spock and Kirk. Spock is in his room and he feels like he's out of control, but of course to everyone else, he's really still staid and calm and fine. And they're like, I don't know what your problem is. And he's like, well, right now you look like plants to me. But then he says, oh, I've been in here playing board games with Kirk, and we're having these imaginary conversations. And then of course, as you come through this episode, you realize, oh no, Kirk really was there in the room with them, and they have spent like however long they were on that planet bonding, which is of course critical because we're getting closer to the point of the two of them becoming this, inseparable pair of friends. But the episode is named after that, and they're kind of like C-plot of the episode.
Yeah.
Like human best friend is the reference to what Spock calls Kirk. He says, I've never had a human best friend. He's like, we just call those best friends, but it's, I like the moment when he realizes that Kirk is real and says, I told you everything. Yeah, that was really an interesting way to explore the developing friendship and relationship between those two characters, but it just didn't feel like as central as maybe the episode implied it would be.
Yeah. I mean, it hypothetically applies to the two humans that were the main part of the plot. You could kind of shoehorn that in. But otherwise, I think you're right. It is kind of weird that the, sort of overarching C plot that needs to lead to where we end up in TOS is an interesting choice for the name of the episode for sure.
Mm-hmm. I did want to mention the other thing that kind of caught me from this episode. Well, Tribbles. We saw Tribbles. That was funny. The Mugatu and costume was particularly funny. Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall. Famous Canadian performer, an absolute icon here, and obviously very well known for his, he was the star of News Radio for a number of years in the 90s, is a well-known actor, but, again, up here, royalty. A fun character. He plays Dendru, the sort of manager of this Cessnar Grand Resort. Funny and good, but not like knock your socks off. He wasn't as over the top as I think Dave is obviously capable of. But I did like the whole, well, you told me to keep you away. You told me to kidnap you. You told me, you made me do this. It was great to see Dave, and it's great to see, obviously, that there is a requirement around them having Canadian content with it being filmed here, but it's amazing when they can cast, great Canadian actors. So I just want to make sure we flag that because I love Dave. So so far it's been 3 episodes, and again, this is what we talked about as the strength of Strange New Worlds. This is the 3rd episode in a row where we've had 3 very different genres across the 3 episodes. We had a real adventure story in the first one, timey-wimey stuff. We had a ghost story, kind of, spooky horror in space kind of story last week. Now we've got this kind of quirky, everybody's drunk episode, which is, again, also a Star Trek, absolutely, it's a Star Trek meme, been done in a number of episodes, never fails to be funny or work. It does make you wonder, we've got 7 more episodes, how many more genres we're going to see. I'm kind of waiting to find out what we're going to get out of the rest of the season now.
We still have the Puppets episode, so yes. That one hasn't happened yet, so at least one of those is accounted for.
Yeah, that seems like it's going to be probably the high water mark of the season, just because, everybody's been talking about that one since while they were still airing season 3, they've been talking about this one. So I think people are pretty stoked about that.
Now, a word from our sponsor.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Now, back to the show.
All right. You want to move on to House of the Dragon?
Let's do it.
All right. So this is the penultimate episode of season 3. This is episode 7, The Dragon in Winter. So we've got one more to go. This one, it's funny. We'd spoken last week about the fact that, we'd had a lot of buildup and a lot of, intense scenes of people's feelings. We had been a little light on Pew Pew. And we thought, well, maybe as we get these last 2 episodes, we'll start to get more into the Pew Pew. Well, how's a 4-way dragon fight for you as far as Pew Pew?
It was pretty neat. It's pretty. I mean, it's always sad because it's like watching a dog fight, but in terms of the how it worked out in terms of being satisfying, I think it was pretty satisfying. After that build up.
Yeah, I think it was a good point. I think the thing with the dragons is, and obviously the dragons are a metaphor for the family, for the Targaryens, but it is kind of heartbreaking too to know that even as soon as whatever it is, 100 years in the future, when we're watching Dunk and Egg, the dragons are gone. There are no more dragons. And here, this is why, these massive beasts that these people have this sort of delusion that they are in control of. I mean, this is the one, we saw, Daemon goes flying at one point, all of them are like yelling commands, but at base level, if these 4 dragons decide they want to throw down, the human beings are just ants on the floor. Like, they just don't care.
Yeah. It becomes pretty dangerous for them when they all meet, and even your instincts, like I think Rhaena was, instinctively wants to get on Sheepstealer and run away, and Damon's like, no, they're gonna rip you out of the sky. Like, you better not do that. Like, at least let the dragon go, otherwise you'll die too.
Yeah. So, kicking things off at the start, so Rhaenyra, after finding out last episode that her sister Helaena is Dreamer, is now, as she starts to become more and more unhinged as every week goes by, sort of goes to Helaena and says, like, hey, I hear you're a dreamer. Tell me everything you know about me. Am I going to be the queen forever? Is this going to work out? Am I going to defeat my enemies? How do I, And Helena's like, that's not how this works. Like, I'm not, it's not like a crystal ball, like I see some things, but, you're not going to get the answers that you want here. And they've done a good job over the past few episodes of showing sort of this increasing, I don't want to call it madness, but just clearly this, like, somewhere between narcissism and egotism and lunacy that is sort of coming up around Rhaenyra. Like, she's losing her bananas a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely getting more and more frantic of, like, she's hypothetically won, right? Like, on paper, it was like Rhaenyra triumphant or ascended. I forget what I'm sure I have the episode listed here somewhere. Rhaenyra triumphant was the episode not too long ago, like episode 3, I think. I mean, it's only superficial. It's like, okay, cool, you have the throne, you have no money, everything's kind of going wrong. You still haven't fully gotten rid of the other side, the usurpers, and it gets worse as this episode goes on. It definitely does feel like she's looking for, some sign that is going to work out, that the pain is worth it. Otherwise, maybe you just give them and say, forget it. Let's just go to Essos, take our dragons, let them keep this land. It's just not worth it to burn the country and rule the ashes.
Yeah, for sure. So she doesn't get the answers that she wants there. But we also, through this episode, see a few visions that Helaena has of, she has the one vision where she sees herself sort of, playing with her children, and, everything's fine, but then the snow starts to fall. So we get this sort of winter is coming kind of vibe there. And then we get this much more intense one where she has this dream where she gives birth to a child who's immediately picked up by a soldier and taken to a dragon who roasts the baby, which was pretty intense. So, we know that, on top of obviously Rhaenyra's sort of descent into desperation and frustration and maybe even madness, Helena is also, exactly what Allison had sort of predicted. If you keep her here and she's, stuck in her bed and she can't go outside, she's going to start really taking this hard, and she's just not that kind of person. She's a very sweet soul. She's a very gentle person, and she's not prepared for the kind of craziness that Rhaenyra brings with her.
Yeah. And it's a thing to remember that she has Dreamfire, which is like, I think one of the larger dragons too, based on what I've seen.
Yep.
So
yeah, but she basically said, like, I don't want to ride a dragon anymore, which, given the like horror that she's seen, again, she saw Aegon, come back barbecued. I could understand why after seeing that you wouldn't want to hop on the back of a dragon, and especially for somebody who's, again, somebody who's gentle and, she saves spiders and stuff. Like, she's not somebody who's like, I'm going to bring my dragon into battle to kill things. Like, that's just not who she is. So interesting. The episode kind of steers towards this sort of conflict we talked about with the dragons. We get, Daemon goes to Jane Eyre and sort of says, what's going on? And she says, well, hey, maybe go check here and, you might have some luck. And we also get this sort of conspiring where Mysaria is saying to Rhaenyra, like, oh, Daemon's clearly, hosing you, because Adam and Bela end up seeing seeing Sheepstealer with a rider, and is like, so she's like, fine, I'm getting on my dragon. So it all kind of builds toward this huge conflict we get to the middle of the episode. What's unclear in the chaos of it, and again, big shout out to them, like showing a dragon battle, and we've seen a few of them over the course of this series, but showing a dragon battle in like the middle of the day on the ground, 4 dragons, like that must have been a freaking expensive thing to film and block and do the digital creation for. Like, that must have been a heck of a thing to build.
Yeah, that's a lot of artistry to understand where the people are going to be relative to the dragons, have the dramatic, like, giant elephants attacking each other kind of vibe to it. Because they're considerably larger than, like, blocking it out for like lion tamers escaping. It's like, no, this is considerably bigger. It's dinosaurs effectively running around.
Yeah, well, they do a few of those where they cut to a wide shot and you just see the scale of the 4 people that are there, and you're like, yeah, they may as well not be there. Like, it's insane, the sort of the size difference between these creatures and their riders. It's unclear. We see some pretty brutal stuff in here. They're sinking their teeth into each other's necks. They're savaging each other with their claws. We see fire. It's unclear. We see that Sheepstealer by the end of the fight can't even fly anymore. So kind of unsure what that means for Sheepstealer in this story going forward, and Rhaena being a dragon rider. If the dragon can't fly, a dragon rider anymore. But we also see, we see Rhaenyra's dragon take some damage. Like, everybody's dragon comes out of this a little worse off, and we know that there's still this absolute behemoth of a dragon, Vhagar, out there waiting for a duel to come at some point. It'll be interesting to see sort of what this means in the bigger scheme of things, because, fighting against a dragon like Vhagar at any time would suck, but when you're not at 100%, like, does that mean that the next fight is the last fight for some of these dragons? It's pretty intense.
Yeah, I hadn't really considered the next fight where, well, I would have won, but I had a bum knee,
yeah, exactly,
from getting injured.
Well, I mean, we see, I think when Sheepstealer's walking away, like, like the scales are just gone from his neck, like, and like steam is coming out of holes all over him. Like, it's not good. One of his wings is messed up. Like, it's not a no stakes battle. This is high stakes. They did some pretty big damage to each other. I think that this is an interesting one. So in the book series, or in the books, Fire and Blood, the character of Rhaena, and there's another character called Nettles, they've taken their two storylines and they've kind of merged them from the books into one storyline here for the show. And it makes sense for the show. And I actually really think it's actually better. In the book, there's kind of this there's this character Nettles. She's the one who claims sheep stealer, and she's the one who causes trouble. There is some lack of clarity because it's an unreliable narrator situation in the book, whether Nettles is daughter of Daemon or is lover of Daemon. Now, with a Targaryen family, could be both, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes.
Yeah, but this is where if this was like a YouTube video, would have the why not both, the little Mexican girl from the old El Paso, like, are we doing crunchy tacos or soft tacos?
Yeah, exactly. So, here I think it makes a lot more sense to combine this. You don't need to add another character. And it also makes things a little more palatable too, because if there was an implication that Daemon had basically stepped out again on Rhaenyra and was like sleeping with someone else or whatever, and had done that, as opposed to what they've done here, where it's like, well, it's my daughter. I had to protect my daughter. Like, what am I supposed to do? It's my daughter. It just seems so much, it makes him seem like so much less of a monster, which he is, but like, at least in this moment, he wasn't trying to hurt Rhaenyra. He was trying to protect his daughter. So, right. Interesting kind of wrinkles here. And obviously this will have some major effects because no matter how you slice it, Rhaenyra is furious with him. And we see that when she they have a conversation later in her chambers and she's just like, how could I trust you after this? You keep doing this kind of stuff to me. So we also end up with, speaking of incest, we have this weird scene where Adam is clearly trying to put the moves on Bela. For those who need a reminder, that's his niece. Half niece. And this is after she already probably slept with his brother last week. So ew, first of all. Mm-hmm. And also, again, makes you wonder about sort of the stakes of all this, where, again, love triangles with people who own dragons and armies, not usually good for the way things working out peacefully. But yeah, that was a lot. We also got, speaking of more incest, we have the storyline from last week playing out where Alicent shows up at Harrenhal looking for Aemond. He is having this vision that she's having sex with his mom, and then wakes up having sex with Alice Rivers, and then freaks out because he realizes he's not sleeping with his mom, is like, oh, I can't sleep with you, gets out of bed, and then discovers his mom waiting at the gates wearing the exact same clothes that he had seen in his vision. So Harrenhal is a very scary place where, if you recall, was it last season where Daemon also had a dream about sleeping with his mother?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to go on the record and say this show has too much incest. It just has too much incest. There's too much incest in this show.
I have to ask the natural question. Is there the same or comparable amount of incest in the book?
Yes, and even more in some cases. But, and again, they go out of their way to sort of say, well, it's the Targaryens have their queer ways and, whatever, and not everybody's on board with it and everything else. But it's just like, at a certain point, it's just, there's no way for it to not be icky. Like when Aemon leaned in a few episodes ago and like planted a big hard smooch on his mom. I don't know about you, but I was curling up and cringing on my couch. I was like, ew. Which is, for the record, again, faithful listeners, what you're supposed to feel when somebody makes out with their mom. Here, again, he's having this dream where he's having sex with his mom and he's cool with it, and he wakes up and he's having sex with a beautiful woman and he's like, I gotta get out of here. Like, that's not for me. So yeah, she ends up showing up there, and then he kills her sort of bodyguard, handler, helper guy, because of course he does. And then Alice basically says, like, I don't know if you should trust your mother. She seems like she's got kind of some second agenda. You might want to keep an eye on her. And of course, she's right. Alicent basically poisons Aemond. He collapses and is, going to die again. And when we see Alice find him, she's like, "You're an idiot." Like, she's not like, "Oh no, I must save you." She's like, "You're a moron." Safe to say that with her witchy ways, that I don't think this is going to be the end for him. But it speaks to this show once again. I'm like, you had one job, Allison. You just needed to kill your son, and I get obviously that's got to be hard, but like maybe stick around till he's done, or I don't know. Once he's unconscious and poisoned, throw him off the side of the balcony. Put a knife through his good eye, like just something.
Yeah, I think the hanging around at the very least would have been helpful.
Yeah, and again, I get obviously, if you're told that you have to murder your own son to save your own daughter, which is essentially what she's trying to do. She's trying to trade Eamon's life for Helena's. I get that cannot be an easy choice to make, and you certainly don't want to see your child die, even if he is clearly a monster. But again, job undone once again. We check in with the stuff that's going on down in Tumbleton, which is still occupied by the Hightowers. Ormond basically says to Corlys, like, hey, you're our prisoner and you're here so that the Velaryon army won't attack because you're their lord, and if they attack here, then obviously killed. So he's hoping that means that less of the soldiers that are coming will come, and that they'll be able to sort of hold their occupation there. But the real twist of this episode comes right at the very end, and it's something I think you and I have sort of hinted around, the fact that, like, there's only so long you can treat your staff badly before the staff stop caring about the job.
Right.
We've seen over the course of this season both Daemon and Rhaenyra treat Ulf and Hugh like dog poop, and Ulf is clearly ready to do something about it. So he is, at the end of this episode, sitting there with Ormond, and they're talking about, hey, let's make a deal. So we're set up for this final episode where, Kristen's dead. The Winter Wolves and the Rivermen are on the doorstep of Tumbleton. The whole goal for Rhaenyra has been get an army there so that the army can use standard practices to invade this village and kill all the Hightowers, so that we don't have to use dragons, because there's no point bringing a nuke to a gunfight, right?
Right.
And in this case, it sounds like one of their tactical nukes is going off radar here. So I think we're set up for a pretty banger of a closing episode for the season too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how Ulf's gonna play out. I don't know if he's just gonna show up on the other side, or be the secret double agent and take out one of Rhaenyra's folks, while pretending to be on their side, just turning at the last minute. Yeah. It could go a variety of ways, but it also was kind of interesting how Ormond, upped the reward, right? Like I forget the name of some who cares, but like better than when Rhaenyra was offering, which is zilch. Ulf was like, hey, can you give me this relatively modest? And Ormond's like, that's trash. I'm going to give you Driftmark. I'm going to give you this big crown jewel.
Yeah, like, oh, you don't want that crummy castle. We got a good castle for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good deal. The one thing we didn't touch on was the King Aemond story. Aemond II. We've had this story of him, trying to figure out how the heck to get off of the continent and get over to Essos, trying to find his way out. And in this episode, we see Larys, and we see Aemond, and we see...
Oh, sorry, you mean Aegon.
Oh, what did I say? Aemond? Oh, sorry,
Aemond. Yeah, so I was getting a little too many people.
Too many names that are the same.
Heavens, Aemond, from the Valerians died in like the first season, so we have one fewer, very confusing variation. Johnny, Jonathan, Jack.
Yes, Aegon. Thank you. Aegon basically is hanging out with Tywin Lannister and Larys. They're trying to get to the coast, but they realize that there's an entire army of Rivermen and Winter Wolves headed their way, and realize, like, we have no chance of getting around them. They're coming en masse. What do we do? And Aegon basically says, like, I'm going to stand my ground. I've had it. I'm done running and scraping and bowing. I'm going to die here like a king, the king that I am. And Larys is like, cool story, bro. I'm going to go Um, he basically says, you know, I am useless here. I am, he calls himself a cripple. He basically says, like, you know, if I can't defend myself, let alone you, like, if I stand here, I'm just going to get slaughtered. So Tylan says, I'll stick around. What the heck? Like, we had a good run. And the two of them decide they're going to go out in a blaze of glory, but it turns out that the blaze is for their glory, not against it. They are going to get murdered by this group of soldiers on Rhaenyra's side, and then all of a sudden, out of the woods, we see Aegon's dragon basically come back from the dead with a matching melty face and scorches all the soldiers. Hopefully he got all of them, because Aegon does loudly proclaim that he is the king and that he is, you know, like, I hope that was a thorough job by the dragon to you know, blow everybody away, because Sunfire's responsibilities here are to, you know, no witnesses. So but that was a pretty cool and dramatic scene, and well done by Tom Glencarney, the actor who plays Aegon. I thought was great when he does his sort of speech of, like, you know, I am King Aegon the Second, first of his name, and, you know, second of his name, and yeah, I thought that was really good. That was a really good performance.
Yeah, I really did like the way that they blocked the shot to show his absolute joy with the dragon, you know, behind him, out of focus, burning everything. And I did joke in our Slack channel about, you know, somehow Sunfire returned.
Sunfire returned, yeah.
Palpatine-esque returns notwithstanding. I think they did establish fairly well from last season. You know, it was a little unclear from the overhead view, you know, were either of the rider or the dragon dead. We knew Aegon had survived. The seemingly dead, but kind of not as bad off as you thought it would be, given how beat up it got. And so they established that, like, you know, it was possible that Sunfire wasn't completely taken out. And I think something very similar for Sheep Stealer, where, like, we didn't see the dragon absolutely dead, like cut in half or exploded or something. So just assume they're not dead unless proven otherwise.
Yeah, and it's a really good point, because in the story version of this, in the book version of this, it's less ambiguous. It's clear that Sunfire is still alive, because I think the one challenge this show has faced, and I know I've struggled with it, I'm sure, and I'm somebody who has read the story, I find the timelines to be hard to keep track of. You know, one of the small gauges that we have is Helena's pregnancy. How pregnant is she? Who's the baby daddy? If it's Aegon, how long has it been since he, like, because it had to have been before he was burned and falls with Sunfire. So how does that work, right? Like, how long has it been since he was injured, went all the way back to King's Landing, healed, escaped, and then made it to this point of the road? Has it been a month, 2 months, 3 months? Like, how far are we? I mean, it looked in this episode like Helena was visually more pregnant. You know, you don't really start showing for the first few months. So is she supposed to be like 5-6 months pregnant at this point? How long has he been gone? So in the books, they're pretty clear. Like, even a dragon that's, like, messed up still needs to eat and drink and stuff like that. So in the story, that happens. So there's no ambiguity whether this thing is alive or dead, because it has to eat, drink. Here, they're just like, it was in, like, a dragon coma or something, and then just rose from the dragon coma and is good enough to start torching bad guys. So yeah, I found it a little harder to follow as far as, like, how long and the circumstances. I think they were just kind of like, okay, how about yada yada yada, it's fine. So pieces on the board, one more episode to go. We've got Ulf ready to betray people. We've got 2 huge armies on their way to Tumbleton. We've got the High Towers there, all amassed. They've got a dragon, and in addition to Ulf, so theoretically they've got a couple of dragons, and all eyes are turning towards Tumbleton for this final episode. I'm really curious to see if we get a big battle. We started the season with a big battle. I wonder if we're going to get this sort of big battle and potential betrayal from Ulf in this final episode, or if they're going to sort of do what they've done in previous seasons and hold their powder and build it up and then be like, oh, you wait till season 4, you come back, there's going to be a huge battle.
Yeah, trying to figure out, with only the one season left, but also the one season left, I'm like, it can't be too many people taken off the board.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'd just be a series of one-on-ones for 10 episodes. That's not going to make sense for the fourth season. So imagine at least one major piece will be taken off the board. But in this, sort of game of tug of war, it looked like one side was totally dominating. Now you have to guess the other side's going to look like it's dominating, and then you kind of swing back and forth within season 4 is what I would guess.
Yeah. It'll be interesting too. I mean, this series is basically built as, the only thing that could defeat the House of the Dragon is the House of the Dragon itself, right? The idea is the civil war is what destabilizes them to the point where eventually they don't have any dragons left. And, we even see that when we watched Dunk and Egg earlier this season. We see that where, people are like, why should I be afraid of the Targaryens? They are the House of the Dragon, but they don't have any dragons. Like, these are just a bunch of guys with white hair riding around on horses now, right?
Right.
So
right.
To sort of know that we get to this sort of apocalyptic place and know that we've got one season left, it does make you kind of think like, ooh, this is going to get grim pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty gut-wrenching in this fourth and final season coming up.
Yeah. And we'll find out in 2028. In the meantime, let's jump over to Silo. So we reached the halfway point of the season with the most recent episode, Memory. This is season 3, episode 5. And in this one, we kind of get all the pieces put back together. So the first 4 episodes, we've had this sort of lesser version of Juliet. She doesn't have all her memories. She's kind of struggling. We got this sort of holy moly twist, in the episode as to, revealing that, not everything is as it seems and not everybody is playing on the different sides that we thought they were. Here we kind of get, it starts off with Juliet and Bernard being rescued. So we basically get this is right kind of where we left off at the end of season 3. Everybody wants to go inside and save Juliet and Bernard from the incinerator. We get, the moment when Camille becomes the head of IT and, that she's, basically assuming that position over her husband. And we see that Sims makes the choice to basically say okay, this is not going to work. So he ends up saving Bernard, which is really weird because in the first episode this season, it looked like Sims was killing Bernard, right?
Yeah, that's certainly how he made it seem.
You see him literally put his hand over his mouth. It looks an awful lot like he's smothering him to death, but turns out what he was doing was being like, hey, shut up, I'm going to take you all the way down to the basement's basement and hide you for a while. So in this episode, we really kind of focus on telling the story of how did we actually get to these places that we found ourselves, 3 or 4 months later in this one. And it's all about them trying to basically trigger Juliet's memory. Can she bring it all back? Can she figure out, what is the big mystery? Why are things as they are? What are the forces working against them for? And she ends up, basically, having these interesting conversations with Bernard, with Sims, with, basically everybody, Knox and Shirley, and they, all sort of come together. And it's not until Juliet gets the watch that belonged to her dad that she kind of snaps to and sort of remembers everything and is ready to sort of all of a sudden be back to who she was. She remembers George, she remembers her dad, she remembers everything, and is ready to sort of get back out there and be the Juliet we know and love. I think it's been an interesting way to tell this story, but I kind of haven't enjoyed, she's just such a distinctive character, Juliet, to have her be lesser than for this whole half a season has been a little tedious for me. I love Rebecca Ferguson as a performer, and I love her portrayal of this character, and I love the character. It's been kind of crappy to be I don't know. This is frustrating. I don't know for an entire half a season.
Yeah, she's been kind of more of a spectator in her own story for this season.
So yeah, it's nice to see that she sort of snaps back to who she is, and hopefully that means that we're going to get a more propulsive second half of the season. The first half has been a little slow, but it's been sort of building the story up. And speaking of building the story up, there's this sort of secondary mystery. Billings has been trying to investigate this murder. He finds out in this episode about all the missing stuff from Critical Supplies. So he's trying to figure out, like, well, where's all this stuff going? Who's stealing all the stuff and why? So that's a really good sort of secondary story. Although I can't say I've loved every bit of the Billings stuff. It feels like they've kind of put him on the back burner a little bit. I'm hoping that comes together a little bit more in the second half too, because I think he was a really interesting character in the past seasons, and I don't love what they're doing with him right now.
Right.
And then we also get this story in the past where, Daniel and Helen, they're basically, starting to realize that they're in the middle of this sort of larger conspiracy around what happened with the mission in Iran and his sister, and this theoretically a cover-up. The guy that they met with, the informant, has gone missing, and they decide they're going to dig further into it, and then all of a sudden their car basically turns against them and kidnaps them. I don't know about you, but it made me want to go and just maybe start looking around my car for like remote activation and deactivation devices, because that was creepy.
I mean, if your vehicle has OnStar, maybe that's like how this works. OnStar got in a wreck. Oh, we're going to drive you to the hospital. I was like, wait, you can do that?
Oh, yeah, no kidding. So that was an interesting sort of wrinkle in the past. I hope that they start to resolve that sooner than later too, because I feel like that storyline, it felt better last week. I feel like it was kind of matching the pace of what was going on in the future storyline with Juliet and everybody else. This one kind of took a back burner, which makes sense. The story was more about Juliet and sort of getting her memories back and getting forward. So I'm hoping where we go from here is more into the, why is what's happening in the past relevant to what we're seeing in the future? We've gotten these sort of allusions to, the memory erasing drug. So we know that exists in both places. So that's got to be part of the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I feel like both stories need to take maybe a step forward in the second half of the season to kind of make the slow start to the season worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that's the hope. And as I stated, probably multiple times while covering this series or this season, I do kind of feel like I might prefer to have, if not an entire arc set in the past, at least episodes of like, maybe people will get frustrated, but just like interleave them, like, tiger stripes or zebra stripes. Is like, we start in the silo, next episode we're in the past, we start in the silo, next episode we're in the past, rather than kind of bouncing between them scene by scene.
Yeah, I find it's been challenging to feel invested in those characters in the past. The only thing that's kind of keeping me in there is I love the actor who's playing Helen, who was, of course, on the Defenders and Daredevil and Iron Fist, all that stuff. Jessica hang with, I really like, but yeah, I'm having a tough time caring a lot about what's going on in the past because they just aren't giving you a lot to work with. So we need a little more character development. We need a little more investment, and we need higher stakes. Like right now, they know there's a conspiracy going on, but we don't know what the stakes are, right? So I think we need to up that to like, why does their story matter? Why does this all, like, how does this all come together? Other than, again, this sort of knowing that there's this memory drug, right?
Great.
All right, you ready to move over to our watch list?
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, well, I'm going to give my spoiler-free review of Spider-Man Brand New Day, just to say that it's well worth seeing in the theater. Very, very well-made film. It's hard to say after only one viewing, but I feel like it's probably the strongest installment. It's probably the strongest installment of any of the Spider-Man.
That's quite the interesting series. So the Tobey Maguire, the Andrew Garfield, any of the Tom Holland ones. That's a pretty.
Yeah, I don't know that I love it more than the Miles Morales ones, because I love that character, and I think those were just so expertly done. So I'll leave those in their own category. But of the live action of the Tobey Maguire, the Andrew Garfields, and the Tom Hollands, I honestly feel like this one. A lot of people will glom onto Spider-Man 2 because it really kind of balanced Peter Parker versus the Spider-Man. One of the hallmarks of Spider-Man is just that he's just a guy. And it's one of the reasons I love the character in the comic books. It's one of the character's strengths in cartoon series, the film series, any series, is that Spider-Man is a person who has a life and problems and challenges that go far beyond I'm a superhero. Uh, it's what's made Peter Parker one of the defining heroes of the last 75 years. And I think they really kind of found that balance in this movie of, they give you some incredible visuals, some really, really cool character stuff, lots of great pew, 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 but also give you a real, like, you are going through a roller coaster with it. And Tom Holland, man, like, obviously he's still a relatively young man. And we've seen him over the course of his career with Marvel and obviously on some of the other projects he's worked on. We've seen him evolving as a performer, but he's really good in this one. Like his performance as Peter, the pathos of it all is really, really impressive. And then you throw on top of that Zendaya, who is just, I mean, she is just locked in right now. Like she is top of her game, between, the movies that she's got coming out this year, right now she's in, as is he. They're both in the two biggest movies at the box office simultaneously. And she just came off of another box office hit in the drama. And she came off of Euphoria. And she's got Dune coming out this year. Like, this person is absolutely on fire. And it's not like because she's a movie star, she's a damned good actress. Like, she's really good at what she does. They add some new mixes in here. We've seen in the trailer, obviously, John Bernthal is back as the Punisher. We see, lots of familiar faces from the previous movies popping in and out here. It's a really complete movie, and it really kind of it's called Brand New Day, and the idea is that it's sort of starting a new arc, a new sort of place for Peter Parker and Spider-Man to go after we left off in a pretty bummer place. They do a really good job of resetting. It cannot be easy to sort of do a reboot with a character that's so beloved. They move it forward a little bit in time. They go from bad place to good place. Like that's a tough transition to pull off, especially with as much hype around not just the character, but obviously Tom Holland and Zendaya, and their relationship is a huge, pop culture thing. And it worked. I was really impressed with how well it worked. I look forward to hearing your thoughts when you get a chance to see it. I know Tim's seen it and he loved it as well. We've seen lots of people weighing in on the Slack channel, lots of our regular contributors who have said, yeah, like I wanted to go see it right after I finished seeing it. It's a really terrific movie, and I'm impressed that they were able to do something so thoroughly enjoyable, especially when it's like this is the last sort of small scale thing that they're going to do. Avengers Doomsday comes out in December. There are no other Marvel movies next year except for Avengers Secret War, which comes out at the end of the year. And, those are kind of also big reset points for the Marvel Universe and where we're going next. So it's good to know that they have done a good reset for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. If they're going to keep telling these stories, you could easily see them going from this movie to another 10 years of Spider-Man movies that are going to be great. And that's really all you can hope for coming out of this kind of movie is, are you going to be able to come out of this and still have this character be relevant and still care about the stakes and everything else? And you really do. So I will say, I found myself very frustrated. I love where I live. I love my community. It has limitations. I have to drive 3 hours minimum to get to the nearest IMAX theater. I have to drive for about 2.25 to get to the nearest AVX theater. 3D is not an option where I am. If I could make a recommendation, it would be try and see this movie in the theater in 3D if you're a 3D fan, because there's clearly a bunch of the Spider-Man shots, the web swinging stuff, some of the action scenes that would look amazing in 3D. I found myself sitting there kind of grinding my teeth a little bit going, oh, sometimes I hate living in Mayberry, damn it. Because you could see how good the 3D would look even without the 3D, and I know the 3D would have been amazing. So if you have that opportunity, I would recommend that's probably the way to go. And obviously, you can go see it in IMAX. But that was one of my minor challenges. I was just like, damn, I'd like to see this movie at its best, And I haven't seen the Odyssey yet. I'm hoping maybe to see it over the next few days. But same thing. It's just like, I know I'm not seeing it at its optimal or even close. And that's just kind of, it's only in those moments where I'm like, oh, I kind of miss living in the biggest city in the country.
Yeah. Wow.
Only other thing I got the watch list here is Lanterns starts in just a week and a bit. So the final episode of House of the Dragon comes on Sunday. It is being replaced the following week with Lanterns. So just to give you a sense of the gravitas that they're putting behind this show, Sunday night, 10 o'clock, or 9 o'clock, I guess it is like the prime spot for, that's where HBO puts the shows that it wants to push. That's White Lotus, that's Sopranos, that's The Wire, that's the big slot for their best shows. And Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, all the big ones, Westworld, that's where it's going. So I think this is going to be a big deal, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see if it hits. But knowing that it's going to be on the 16th, starting on that Sunday, I feel like that's HBO's way of saying, hey, this matters to us and it's going to matter to you. So I've got that on our calendar, and looking forward to seeing that one come out soon after we do our next episode recording, but not before we do our next episode drop. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to that one too. I think people are more hyped about it now that the most recent trailer that you have linked here shows off more. So it's less, it's one of those things where, people are going to complain, oh, it doesn't show this or that. And then if they show too much in the trailer, like, oh, they showed everything. I was like, well, what do you want, dude? Like, we should just go back to teasers. You got 30 seconds go. Subliminal messages. I don't know how to make you people happy.
You're never going to make everybody happy. I honestly, I admire my son, who has, he's been so busy with his studies and with his work that he hasn't had a chance to keep up with as much sci-fi pop culture, nerddom as he would like. And he's basically said, like, I'm not watching trailers because they just ruin so much right now. And he's like, you could watch a teaser trailer maybe, but anything after that, like, you're going to get spoiled on stuff. It's like, I just want to go in and just come in as clean as I can and just enjoy it as it is. But I mean, I said that to my wife the other day. It's really challenging too, because you can't go on social media. You can't go onto the blogosphere that you and I go onto all the time for content for our show, to talk to people, to see what people are feeling about stuff. You'll get spoiled. That's the reason why I kind of ran out last night. I was like, oh, I've got a free evening. I'm going to go see Spider-Man. My wife was like, have a good time. I was like, great. I'm going to go by myself. I don't care. I'm going to go see Spider-Man before it gets spoiled. Because it's really hard to not be spoiled on stuff if you go to the places that we go. I admire people like my son who are like, I'm just not going to go those places. I'm like, okay. But I remember that. I remember when I was in college, there was a stretch about 3 years there where I just I missed a good chunk of Deep Space Nine when it first aired, and some of the other stuff that was sort of in the pop culture zeitgeist, because I just didn't have time. Luckily, I did have a very caring stepfather who would make a point to give me a call and say, hey, I'm sending you a VHS or a DVD of something so you can watch it, because you should watch it. I'm like, okay, I'll try and find the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah. All right, what do you got for our watch list?
I have X-Men 97 Season 2. It's rounding the bases on the season finale, which will be coming up on August 12th. I've been enjoying this one. I know there are people on the internet that don't feel it quite lives up to Season 1 of X-Men 97. I think that's fair. For folks who are kind of feeling like, oh, it's a bunch of grab bag episodes, that's not entirely untrue, but I do believe that you can see the through line with the Cable and Apocalypse story. It's maybe a little less obvious than just straight up doing, Cable fighting Apocalypse every episode. But it's definitely there in terms of how they're bringing in a whole bunch of other stories from the X-Men comic books. So I've been enjoying it. I hope other people do too. And then hopefully they'll do a season 3. I don't recall if that's been renewed or not.
Yeah, I don't know if they've announced anything about that. I mean, it seems like it was a pretty big success. And, you never know how these things are measured anymore as far as what they need to get to consider something a success. But it definitely, I know people who are into it are really into it. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, it says here on the Wikipedia page, a 3rd season was confirmed in March 2024. So
Oh, wow. They're way ahead of the game.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess they probably had to do the first two as just a together thing. It costs so much to do all the artwork to design what the character is gonna look like, and then it's a new animation style that has to look like the old animation style. So probably 2 seasons right up front, and then if it did well enough for the first season, they probably say, okay, let's go ahead and get some more episodes for season 3.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, who knows? Maybe they'll do a 3 and 4 simultaneously too. That would be nice to cover. Yeah, I must say I watched the first few seasons of the original X-Men '97, but back in the day, and enjoyed it. But it just, again, timing just wasn't good for me. And then I've always intended to go back and watch, but never have caught up. But knowing the number of people who have been like, I love the new series, it does actually really kind of make me think I really got to make the time for it. I think, like many people, I'm already like, I know what I'm doing when the weather starts to turn awful here, because we get 5 hard months of winter here. My wife has been making the same comment. She's like, oh, that looks so good. We will watch that in November. So that's how it's going to go. All right. Well, that's going to do it for another episode. So, hey, Jaime, if people want to find you, where can they look?
I'm on Instagram as @DevWithTheHair.
Well, cool. I am on Instagram. It's @JPK News, or you can find me on is @JPK. Want to look there. If you want to find our co-creator and absentee Tim, he's at Tim? Oh no! I sold myself down the river here. Am I got it right?
I thought he says @TIMMITRA on the Blue Ski machine. I forget what his new pattern is.
Yes, you're right. TIMMITRA. That's how it goes. You can find him there. Obviously, we miss him and wish him well. Hopefully, he'll be back before long. And in the meantime, we will see you in the future. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. If you have feedback or questions, you can get in touch with us on the website. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Tried putting lanterns into our calendar earlier, but my calendar was giving me nothing but grief. I'm sure I was pinging you and Tim like crazy, but tried to put it in and it just kept like giving me error messages, and then tried to put it in as like, oh, lantern airs for 2 months straight. I'm like, that's not right. So I'll fix that.
Yeah, sometimes fun when the technology fails like that in seemingly arbitrary ways.
Yeah, we'll have to decide how we want to approach some of the stuff that's coming up. If we want to do week to week on lanterns or dark matter or some of the other sci-fi stuff that's coming up over the next while.
Well, let's see. This coming week, no travel for me, so I'm actually available on the normal day of Thursday the 13th,
right,
assuming that works for you.
Yep.
And then traveling the week of the 17th, which means I should be available on Friday the 21st.
Okay.
And then we have to skip the week of the 24th because I am out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's a pretty rough one.
Well, we seem to have impressed him with the volume of information we had in the last episode. Well, maybe we'll cut back on our headlines a little bit for that episode, but
just to squeeze it in a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, by then we'll be done. House of the Dragon will be done. I think Silo actually wraps up somewhere in that same. I think it ends up on the 4th of September, so we'll be able to close that off somewhere in that window too. And then, then Dark Matter I think actually comes out on the 20th. We'll figure it out. yeah, lots of good stuff coming up. Good. I got to try and find a time to go see the Odyssey before it gets even to smaller and smaller and smaller theaters. At this point, they've already moved it from there's 3 screens in the nearest community to me, the nearest movie theater to me. They have one sort of large and 2 sort of medium sized, and the one large. They've already moved Spider-Man in there, which means you can't see Odyssey on the biggest screen. You have to go see it in the slightly smaller screen. And now I'm just like, it's bad enough that I couldn't see it on IMAX or whatever the optimal version is, and now I'm down to like eventually I'm going to be sitting there in a shoebox watching it, 3 other people. This is great. I love the jokes, the memes. Have you seen the memes about like how Nolan intended you to watch it? Everybody's like, oh, Nolan wants you to watch it in 70 millimeter IMAX film, and that's how it's supposed to be watched. And I love it when I see the ones where somebody actually coded it onto a Game Boy cartridge, the original Game Boy, and played it on the screen for that. They're like, as Nolan intended, and they actually like coded it in there so you could watch it on a Game Boy. I'm like, oh, wow, that's rough.
That's pretty far. I thought it was going to be, on the back of this headrest on this Delta Airlines flight from Seattle to Miami or something.
Well, you travel a little bit more than I do now, so you'll have to keep your eyes peeled for that over the next few months. If you catch anybody watching the Odyssey on the back of a headrest, just surreptitiously take a little photo for us, throw that up on the Slack channel, because that'll be pretty darn funny. Like, is this how you're supposed to watch this? This looks pretty good. Whoa. Yeah. No, I didn't mind the experience. I've learned that going to the local theater here, normally we sort of sit, pretty central in the theater. Here I sit like in the first row of the second section, so like not in the little clump that's right at the very front, but like right near it, because otherwise you're just too far away. It's too small, so kind of just got to make do.
Yeah.
I miss the big city sometimes. Well, on the bright side, Friday night means I don't have to get up at 7:30 tomorrow morning. That's a nice win for me.
That's true.
I'll take it. How are your Mariners doing this year? Blue Jays just had a little fire sale, so I'm stopped paying a lot of attention to that.
No, we've been pretty much on a trash streak. We're somehow only 3 games back, which makes me wonder how bad the Astros and the Rangers have been, because it feels like we lost 10 in a row. I don't know what we actually did. Maybe it's because we had a losing split, but it just feels like, it's like win 1, lose like 4 in a row, win another one, lose another 4 in a row. It just makes it seem much more dramatically worse.
Yeah,
you're sure we are in the.
You're just in the same vicinity as the Blue Jays as far as the overall record. The Blues is just a couple games behind the Mariners. The problem is that we're in a division with like a bunch of monsters. So we've got the Rays and the Yankees and the Red Sox, and so we're in dead last in our division because everyone else is a juggernaut.
Yeah, I think we're only like 2 back on the wild card, but it still shocks me. I'm like, how can we be just that far back? We've been trash. But I don't know. That's why they play the games, right? It's only August.
Yeah, there's an old saying in soccer. Soccer is a beautiful game. 11 men per side. Goes back and forth. Beautiful passing, beautiful scoring, and in the end, Germany wins. That's the Dodgers. When they made the trade for the ace of the Tigers staff last week, I was like, okay, so why does everyone else even bother playing baseball anymore? This is just nonsense. Just absolutely crazy to have them just their payroll is, I think they said you could combine like 8 other teams into their payroll. Like, that is absurd, and to be fair, that's one of the reasons I think the Blue Jays were making a few of these moves, is because there's an expectation to be a lockout. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
Even the medium market teams, like, Toronto's a pretty big market because it's mostly Canada entirely. You've got the entire Pacific Northwest to yourselves. Like, they should be like pretty big market teams, but like when one team spends like that, like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, that's where I think, hard cap, hard floor, that's not that far away from the hard cap, is the inevitable way to bring closer parity there. So that a monster team has to be dismantled at some point.
I mean, it's what's happening in basketball right now. The number of teams that are they're realizing they're up against, major penalties. They're like, I guess we're going to have to trade one of our good guys. That's the whole point, right? Is that so that teams don't just load up and you have like these haves and have-nots. You actually have teams that can't just continually load up and teams that can't, continually be terrible because there's always good players on the market.
Right.
That's the dream anyway. All right. Well, that's it for me. It's late. Going to bed.
All right. I'll talk to you on Thursday then.
Yeah, Thursday as usual. Sounds good.
All right. Have a good one.
You too, buddy. Take care.
Later.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.